There we go. I think it's on now. Good afternoon and welcome to our Safety on the High Seas deep dive. We're going to have truly a hybrid panel. Our moderator is going to be beaming in from on high along with a couple of our panelists, and we have our physical panelists here. What I find interesting is for the last 2 days we've been talking about our mariners and we've been talking about safety. Well, I know I'm committed to our mariners and our safety, and I know everybody on this panel and everybody joining us is as well, as are those here in the room. So I look forward to our discussion today, and we're going to be learning a lot. There are a lot of different facets that are coming to the table in terms of what this topic means. Above all, I think we can all agree that it comes down to the mariner, and we're looking forward to hearing about some of the ways we are protecting that mariner. So Captain Óli Olsen of the Bahamas Maritime Authority, you're beaming in from on high. Take it away.
Hello? Yes, I'm here. Good evening, everyone. And it's Óli Olsen here. I am Deputy Director for Seafarers and Managing at Bahamas Maritime Authority. I have a background as Master Mariner or basically in all positions on a ship. So, and the meeting is going on like this, that each panelist gets 5 minutes for an introduction, and I will start off with an introduction which starts now. Thank you. When I went to sea many years ago, the crew on board came from a homogeneous Nordic cultural background, and there were no women. What's more, all of us deckhands were on the same salary, regardless of how long we had been doing the job. The more experienced seafarers mentored us younger ones and taught us crucial things to be aware of when on board a ship. Stories were told to us by the experienced seafarers, and we believed them. However, it turned out the stories weren't always so true. We were told to report issues to the old man, as we referred to the master, which made him smile. He would then provide advice to us to how we should reply to the mate who first told us to report, and we would follow the advice, of course. Nowadays, that could be called bullying or harassment, but there was a sharp, tacit borderline on how far anyone would take things. That borderline was crossed. Fellow shipmates would intervene immediately. My understanding is that it was a light-hearted way of keeping entertained in the very isolated environment on the ship. But on the other hand, it was a way to learn. Later I joined ships and offshore oil facilities where the crew and employees came from multiple cultural backgrounds, a change which has happened throughout the entire industry. The behavior mentioned above would be different if it occurred between people with diverse backgrounds and could easily lead to misunderstandings. In these instances, the behavior would definitely be interpreted as bullying and harassment, and could lead to competition between diverse cultures, which would compromise the safety on board. Consequently, cliques of crew members might develop, which in the worst cases have led to incredibly sad outcomes. Harassment. The competition between crew members from diverse cultural backgrounds may fast escalate to bullying and harassment of individuals. The number of women that are employed in the industry is gradually increasing. Again, cultural norms play a role, and women may experience harassment not just on the psychological level because they are women. Some of them may also experience harassment of a more physical character and on occasion abusive behavior by their male colleagues. How can we mitigate against the effects of harassment and abuse on the individual? Inclusion. On the other side of bullying and harassment and abuse is inclusion. New crew members are welcome on board and feel they're part of the team. What's the effect on safety? While a culture of bullying and harassment has a negative effect on safety, we can turn that around if we engender an inclusive environment. So the key question has to be, are the seafarers equipped with the right tools to build the inclusive environment on board to prevent bullying, harassment and abuse? Thank you very much. That was what I had to say, and I will give the floor on to Len Quist from VIKAND, and he will talk a bit about safety from a healthcare perspective. Go ahead, Len, please.
Thank you. You guys hear me okay? So good afternoon. My name is Len Quist, and I'm with VIKAND. We're a global maritime healthcare provider. Started out in 2009 in the cruise industry, and since then have expanded in that vertical, but also moved in, especially now after COVID, into other maritime segments. We approach risk mitigation through a proactive healthcare and public health approach. We are a very crew-centric organization. Most of our team members, probably close to 95%, are either at sea as doctors, nurses, EMTs, but the rest of the organization has also spent time at sea in various operational capacity. We probably oversee 2,500 medical interdictions every day, and we really believe that with our team members working very closely with crew, and of course in the cruise industry we're working very closely with passengers, that prevention, small little steps can make larger incidents, can prevent larger incidents. I think most of us would agree that onboard crew is critical, if not the most important asset on board. And when we talk to operators and in conversations with them, we ask, do you have a crew asset management program? And do you use predictive maintenance to support those assets? The answer most of the time is no. But then when we ask them, do you have a predictive maintenance program for your coffee machines on board? And of course, yes, we do. So we really believe that a proactive approach is key to physical and mentally healthy crew. Small but targeted programs can prevent small issues or challenges becoming big ones. And today with digitalization, with access to communication becoming more readily available, costs coming down both on the software and hardware and communication side, we really believe it's time to be taking a much more proactive approach. Today, with the challenge of crewing and older seafarer being PMI'd out, again, a onboard proactive program can prevent our most experienced seafarers with a little bit of help, a little bit of oversight, a sort of situation of elevated blood pressure or being pre-diabetic can be managed. And as we look at ESG, it's growing in importance in the industry. We as a company advocate that the S in ESG is really critical, because if we want to optimize the E and G without really looking at the S, and specifically around health and safety, the E and G really will not reach its full potential. There's been a lot of talk today about digitalization and data sharing and how that's going to increase the resilience and efficiency in the supply chain. Conversely, and likewise, we think with the ability to collect information, we can share what works in the industry, we can share what healthy outcomes mean and what best practices mean, and share that across the industry. And that's something that we are very much advocating for. So just to summarize, a proactive mental and physical health program will see risk mitigation, reduction in incidents, accidents, improvement in retention, and reduction in medical disembarkation and diversions. Thank you. Did we lose connection?
You're good, go ahead.
Who's next?
Good afternoon. I think mine is the next number. So I don't know if he has shifted around, but anyway, let me go with the original plan. So I just, you all have been here in this part of the world, and I'm sure most of us have not seen or have not heard what kind of difficulties the mariners faced during this last pandemic, especially in the Far East region. Because we have so many ships, they were plying in this Far East, Indonesia, Singapore, China, Japan, and I can tell you the incidents, so at least you get aware that what kind of difficulties we all faced. I'll give you an example. We had to change a crew on a tanker. Now, first of all, the tankers, when you all know, they don't get a fixed route that nobody knows where they will end up, So till the last minute, we had no clue that she's going to end up in a place, God-forsaken port in Japan, where they don't allow any crew change unless you apply like 3 weeks in advance to get a visa. Fortunately we didn't know, but our crew manager had applied in 3-4 places in advance, thinking where our ship goes, at least we can do some crew change. So he had paid a lot of money getting the visas done and getting all the applications in place. So we had 22 crew members flying from India, did all the COVID tests 24 hours before departure, all clear. They took a flight non-stop to Japan, arrived there in 16, 18 hours journey from India. They landed up on the airport, they had another test, and 2 guys came positive. They did not even allow anybody to get out of the area, immigration area. Everybody was put back in the same flight back to India. Now the torture starts in India. India had a rule that everybody has to do a COVID test within 24 hours before departure to arrive in India. The 24 hours already gone. So they come to India, now they are put into quarantine for 7 days because they have no test. They said, we just came from the airport back to the airport. No, but you came in the flight. You had many passengers with you. So you go back to quarantine for 7 days. In the meantime, the ship there is waiting for the crew change, and the crew said, we will not sail the ship till our crew is being changed here, because we have been 6 months on the ship and we want to go home. So we had to wait for 7 days there. This same crew who was positive, 2 members became negative when they arrived here. I don't know, it's magic. So after 7 days in a hotel, we did another examination, COVID test, all negative. Again, put them back into the same flight. So this is how we spent a lot of money. You can imagine 22 crew members going to Japan. Each ticket that time was a $3,000 ticket. So 72,000 up, down, again up. And all these tickets we had to pay, hotel expense. So this is one small incident of crew change. I tell you something about an accident we had. One of the bosun, he fell on the deck, it's a cargo ship. He fell on deck in China, and I think he had some broken leg and some wound, blood coming out. So they called the ambulance. First of all, the ambulance, they came close to the ship, said, sorry, we can't give him any treatment, and we can't take him with us too. I said, come on, man, he will die. Like, he's already bleeding, like, do something. The captain was shouting to the agent, do something. I don't know what happened. They took some, information from the higher authorities, got the permission to take him to the hospital. They took him like he is going to the moon, They put, I don't know how many pieces of cloth around him and like, airtight in a vacuum container sort of thing, They took him in the hospital in isolation zone. He was negative, tested negative, there was no problem, but still they told him isolation. And he got cured, I think probably in 10 or 12 days time he was cured, like fit to travel back to home. They won't let him go to get out of the hospital. P&I club, so many people were involved, the agents, the P&I, we had a local Chinese chief engineer whom we used to employ before as a superintendent. He went, they did not allow him to go for almost 2.5 months.
There's 1 minute.
So you can imagine the torture we went through just to get a crew member back to India after he was cured or fit to travel basically. And this is like, there are so many examples, it's not only just one. Even Singapore, we had so much of torture. We had to diversify the ship to Batam and pay $100,000 to get the ship crew change, So this is all I just want to relate to people here. So you get the hang of, like, just an idea, that kind of torture the mariners went, especially in Far East. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks. Just in time, 4 seconds left. And then we have the honor of to have Dr. Arthur Diskin, Future Care's Global Medical Director, up from Miami to provide insight into seafarers' healthcare challenges today, the urgent need for telehealth and foresight into the future of the COVID-19 pandemic and other viruses in your eyes.
So
Mr. Arthur, please.
Thank you. My name's Art Diskin. My background is predominantly emergency and critical care medicine. So I had a very interesting perspective during COVID. Is sort of by day I was in the ER taking care of the patients, and by night writing newsletters and dealing with a lot of the commercial industry on developing COVID policies and trying to get ships cleared in China and having people develop reasonable policies towards quarantine and isolation of crew that, of course, as we all know, could vary from one country to the next or even within different ports in the same country with the response. So it was a very interesting time for me to be in that. We keep hearing people talk about the post-COVID era. We really are by no means in the post-COVID era. We're one mutation away from being back where we were. And I don't know if any of you are familiar. When I was a kid, we had this vending machine that they used to call whack-a-mole. And the little mole was an animal, and it would come up, and you had to hit it wherever it came up, and you got points whenever you hit the mole. And I sort of predicted early on that COVID would be like that. It would keep resurfacing in different areas, and we would solve the problem in Los Angeles, and it would pop up in New York or South Africa. And we've seen that to varying degrees, and we right now have a variant that's extremely communicable, but people don't seem to be getting that sick from that. But we still have large areas of the world, especially in Africa, that are running less than a 10% immunization rate. And that sort of creates a cesspool of possible mutations that can occur. So I think it's a little dangerous to talk about the post-COVID era. So until they develop a vaccine that really vaccinates us against the core of the coronavirus and not constantly against the spikes, we're going to go ahead and see potential resurgences that we'll be able to handle better. But we need to make sure that, certainly from the shipping industry perspective, that we're able to develop a rapid response when these challenges occur, and not to develop the philosophy, well, it's over now. As far as just the concept of safety and healthcare on board the ships, it takes a healthy crew to be a safe crew. If there's any crew member that is not apt or optimal from a healthcare standpoint, then they are a safety risk to the company. And COVID has really revolutionized the way we look at the healthcare of our crew. And it really begins, in my opinion, it begins as us as an industry retaking a look at our PME-REME process, our pre-employment process, and adding things such as mental health screening, better mental health screening to the PME process and being able to anticipate problems. And then we put the crew on the ship and its environment with numerous stressors, whether they be the normal ones of everyday life, financial, family situations at home, or one specific to the ships, including now adding the stressors that are moving towards diversity and inclusion will automatically bring to the shipping industry. And how are we going to handle those stressors and optimize that from a cultural standpoint of healthcare being a priority on the ships. At the same time, what we've seen is we've seen an explosion in the ability to cost effectively communicate with our ships. And this is the time we really need to look at incorporating telehealth into everyday activities of the ships. And also teledevices. Things are getting smaller. You can put a watch on all the crew members that can take an EKG. The technology is exploding, coming down in size, coming down in cost. Being able to expand the capabilities on board the ship, oxygen concentrators, expanding formularies effectively for the size of the ship, it will enable us to take care of crew members better with telemedicine and teledevices as we move forward. And then lastly, this issues of mental health on board. We take crew members who we don't really know, put them
1
on.
minute.
We put crew members on who they may have underlying mental health issues that haven't been exposed or haven't been disclosed, or they may actually develop them from being away from home for the first time, because we really don't know the motivators of employment for these different crew members. And we need to be able to incorporate and handle that. And what I think the industry needs to look at is a champion, just like they're developing champions of inclusion, champions of sustainability, champions of healthcare for the crew that will deal with all of these issues and determine what is a success story for your particular company or organization with your healthcare and move into that direction.
Thank you, Dr. Arthur. And then we have Captain Raymond Peter Bernhard from Bernhard Schulte Shipmanagement. He will talk about crew safety, crew injuries, and analysis of that.
Thank you.
Please go ahead, Raymond Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, can you all hear me? Yes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to every one of you. Bernhard Schulte is no stranger in the shipping industry. We manage about 600 odd vessels. We employ 26,000 seafarers, which are dear to our heart, and 24 crewing service centers all over the world. We have multinationals on board our vessel, and we pride ourselves. I think that's the biggest asset that we seek to have, which is our seafarers who serve for us. I think one of the key factors that we all try to manage during this conference is human element, and seafarers at our heart shouldn't just be a cliche. I think it just shows at this turnout here how many people actually mean that. Yeah, I think this should be one of the most important seminars or the talking point where all the tables here should be full and people waiting to come in, right? But I see a very different factor. Environmental is good, all our sustainable studies is good, but remember, the creation was created for mankind, not the other way around. So let us not go overboard with this. The most important thing we should do is take care of our seafarers, and I see what our panelists are speaking about, and I echo what Captain Satinder just now said, and the difficulty we found during the COVID-19 in just getting our people back home safely. Some of the statistics from the PNI Club, a lot of crew injuries over the last 5 years has increased due to maybe stress, due to last 3 years where we couldn't sign off people early. We saw the number of deaths increase from 91 cases in 2020 to I think another 100 in 2021. So the cases are rising. It could be that's due to committing suicide because of stresses, which again, not many people speak about, but I think we need to start to encourage this within the shipping industry. We found the lack of disparity between regulatory requirements rising, but the inability for us to sign off people. Just the simplicity of signing them off even when they are sick. And in very good ports, it's not just third world country ports, but ports like, you know, Singapore, Australia, we found it so difficult even to sign them off. And crew denied sign off. So, I mean, even the regulatory requirements are high. I guess it takes all the people within the supply chain to come together, not just the ship owners. I think everyone has to come together to make this happen and to bring our seafarers back home safe. And it shouldn't just be a cliche. The other thing I just want to say in closing, we in Bernhard Schulte take into account the 4 pillars as we move into the new environment, sustainability, is the systems that we use. We use a lot of systems to reach out to our seafarers. We use a lot of latest new technology, apps, seafarers portal. We bring them alerts on latest incidents so that we are aware. Then we use a lot of apps to make sure they get updated on their salary being sent to their home, wellness, you know, how the dietary provision on board, make sure they eat healthy, they exercise. All this is part of our day-to-day life that we bring, that is not just the shore but also to the seafarers. Then we have the processes. We looked into making sure processes are easy to be understood, not like those days when it's so thick in the manuals that people get lost. We make sure that it's very bite-sized and it's down to the point. Third comes data management. There's just so much of data, but it has to be feasible to our seafarers to be able to manage the data. Nowadays you see so much of regulations, SIA 2.0, right ship requirements. The demands is just rising and rising and rising, but the number of people on board remains the same.
1 minute.
Yeah, and lastly, the 4th pillar, so I spoke about systems, processes, data management, and last is the people that work for us, both ashore and on board. I think the engagement has to increase. We saw through COVID-19, we started to engage everyone on board. We have softwares to reach out even to the lowest rank on board to make sure that we hear their disparities, their concerns, and it has to be raised to the highest level within Bernhard Schulte, which is myself. So thank you for that, and let's put our walk to the talk. That's, I think, important.
Thank you, Raymond. And now we have Lianne Veldkamp, I think it's pronounced. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
And she's from Northeast Maritime Institute, and she will say something about psychological effects from harassment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie, for giving me the floor, and thank you for having me as well. Maybe I can start with telling something about me and my background. I started out as a dual licensed maritime officer, working on board of big container ships. And currently I serve as an IMO policy coordinator for the Commonwealth of Dominica Maritime Administration, and I represent IMO in there. And I also connect maritime professionals globally through the online learning simulators, training and examination certification platforms of NAMMA and Halo, which provides online education to mariners from Northeast Maritime Institute, like Ollie said. And also, I started leading a working group for the Center for Ocean Policy and Economics on psychological safety, bullying, sexual assault and harassment in the maritime sector. And that's where I wanted to talk with you about. And I'm very sorry to say that the audio was not very good for me to hear, so I hope it will make sense what I have to contribute. But yeah, the thing that we just started is to collect a group of people who are on the same page as to what we think is needed in the maritime sector, and that is to address sexual assault and harassment and bullying. And that is by providing psychological safe working environments. And that's not only providing safety on the mental aspect, but also, on the operational safety aspects. And I'm very proud to say that we are almost finishing up, or we are now finishing up our work on a model course on personal safety and social responsibility. And from that, we amended an STCW table with language about psychological safety and why it's important to learn about that. And we are now submitting that to the HTW subcommittee of IMO on the human element training and watchkeeping, that is, to just, first of all, open the discussion within IMO as well and provide awareness about what's going on in here. Because I think, safety starts, the very basis of safety starts with feeling safe. And that might sound a little bit wishy-washy to some people, but it's actually really important. If you don't feel safe, you cannot act safe, right? So, and it starts with education, we believe. And we're really proud to collect a very nice group of people from within all kinds of perspectives, like member states, organizations, companies, non-profit organizations, and they're all voluntarily providing their expertise to our group. And we are now influencing change. So not only on the model course work, we are also looking to see if we can do something with reporting mechanisms, for example, so that we can make sure that if something happens, that it's reported in a good and safe way, and that people are held accountable for their actions if they did something which was illegal, or something which isn't right. Let it put it that way. So I think these are just amazing things, and I'm so happy that things are starting to develop right now, and that people like us all are talking about this stuff, and that something will be happening for the better. So this positive change, I think, is very much needed. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for having us once again. And please let me know if I can contribute, or if you have questions. I'm always happy to answer them or provide more information if you like. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Eva. I heard you very clearly, so that's always some progress.
Good.
Next on the program is Jason Zuidema, I think is the correct pronunciation, and he's Executive Director of North American Maritime Ministry Association, NAMMA, and I believe he will inform us about NAMMA and the activities they're involved in and the observations they make. The floor is all yours, Mr. Jason. Thanks.
Thank you so much for the invitation to speak. I represent NAMMA. NAMMA is an association of 55 different seafarer centers. You might know them as Seamen's Church or Seafarer's House or Mariner's House, or it's not helpful that we have 55 different names, but anyways, the Association of Seafarer Centers. We have a wider network called ICMA, the International Christian Maritime Association. I serve as the General Secretary of that group as well. 3 months ago, one of our chaplains, who is in Bremen in Germany, observed this in the Seafarer Center. There was, at the time, a crew of Ukrainian seafarers who came ashore, who were very distraught about their homes, about what was going on at home. And Ukrainian seafarer came in, and he ordered a beer and sat down in front of his computer and called his wife. It was clear that it was his wife, and he had a very animated discussion with his wife. It was quite public. It wasn't that the chaplain was eavesdropping on anything. It was very clear there was a conversation, but not understanding Ukrainian, it looked like they had a fight, and it was, but something was very dramatic. Then the wife goes off the screen, and he sat there quietly, just looking at a room. And an hour passed, and he came up to the bar and got another drink and went back to sit down again, sitting in front of basically this blank screen. He was just looking at an empty room, and seemingly the wife had gone, and the chaplain started thinking, yeah, maybe there was a really big challenge in his life. 2 hours went by, 3 hours went by, 4 hours went by, staring blankly at a screen. Finally, it's the end of the night, last call, and the chaplain very sheepishly said, look, what can I do for you? I see that you're really distressed and that you're really intent on the screen. Maybe has this really affected you? And the seafarer said, no, not at all. Come and look. And then he brought the chaplain in front of the screen. He said, look. And the chaplain said, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. What's an empty room? And he said, no, they're on the bed. They're on the bed. He said, what is that? That's my son. He was just born. I've been listening to him breathe for the last 4 hours. This story, I love it. It's beautiful. It really gets to the heart of what we do with seafarers. But it evidences two things that are really important for us to get our work done. And it goes back to, I think, the larger issues of inclusion, harassment, all the other mental health and other physical health issues on board ships. So one of our angles that we really take is that shore leave is so important. That getting off a ship and being able to go to a seafarer center in this particular case is vital for seafarers. Shore leave is not something that is a special gift to seafarers to pat them on the back to say thanks for good work, but shore leave is part of the Maritime Labor Convention and something that should be jealously guarded. When it's denied, it should be not denied for really important reasons. We, as a group, are really concerned that sometimes those reasons are not entirely clear, and for us, supporting shore leave and encouraging shore leave is important. The second thing in my little story was about communication with family. Communication with family via the internet or telephone or whatever other means is so important. And again, that's not just something to reward seafarers or to tell them they've done a good job, but something that's critically important in their lives. I think in trying to respond to some of the issues that we have, whether it's the bigger issues of the pandemic or some of the other longer standing issues that we've had already, is to look at issues, for example, of shore leave or of communications. But also then I add two more. One is a recommendation, another one is a question. The recommendation is that a lot of our work is to better communicate with seafarers about the resources that are available. There are lots of resources available for mental health, for communicating with shore, for healthcare provision, but sometimes seafarers don't know they exist. And being better and more proactive about trying to share all those resources is really important. Many of our member societies have developed a number of chat services or other tools that are there. The second one, and I think it's in the context of this conference, but also other conferences, is trying to get a handle on what actually the S of ESG even is. Whose standard are we using to say what that S is? How does a shipping company knows that it's in its ESG, that it's doing really well on that? I've talked to a few. RightShip, for example, has a tool on developing a tool on reporting on that. But there's a lot of different tools. What my call is, how can I help those companies in trying to track, for example, issues of shore leave, trying to track what's a good standard for internet on board, for example. Many shipping companies are increasing the internet on board, but what's the standard of internet on board? Just in the Maritime Labor Convention now, there is new verbiage that will come into force in 2 years about communications on board. What will be the standard? What impact will that have going forward? I would love to further those conversations, and I think that would be important as we move forward in trying to put together. We all have something deep to say about promoting social on board, but putting sort of clearer standards, I think would be very useful. Thank you. Sorry, I believe we can't hear you if you are speaking.
microphone muted. We have Sahil Chand from a company called ShipSafe, and he's going to talk about a holistic approach for centralized business administration. No, business operations, sorry. Mr. Chand, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Captain Óli. I got opportunity to just quickly rush into this room from the cyber deep dive, and one point which stood out was interoperable systems. You know, the systems which are unified in their approach, and we, you know, the other gentleman also spoke about the ERP systems, specifically, whether it be crew management or whether it be a plane maintenance system or electronic oil record book and stuff like that. So I would like to quote that we are in an era. I was going through a in Maritime Executive, one of the articles. It said that we are in an era of tailored solutions and data-driven business, and maritime industry players who resist digital transformation now risk getting left behind. So whether a business is fighting to achieve net zero or comply with upcoming emissions guideline or optimize their operations, business operations, to boost business objectives, information is the most powerful tool, whether even it comes to crew management. And, you know, in order to take better informed decisions, bases the data which these vessels or these companies are generating. So information is the most powerful tool at its disposal. So without a digitalized fleet, that business is leaving valuable information on the table. And I'm quoting Mr. Paul Sells, who's the global head of digital solutions at ABS. So digitalization, basically the centralization, the interoperable systems, which were not being used earlier. I've been advocating on interoperable systems since 2016. And at ShipSafe, we have got these IT suite and inspections platform, which completely, you know, centralizes the IT assets on board, on which every kind of ERP or information systems work on board these vessels. So if they are protected from cybersecurity perspective and from preventive maintenance perspective and recent IMO cybersecurity guidelines, and so I see that even any kind of operations on board these vessels can be seamless. Our ShipSafe IT Suite platform enables policy-based automation, which in turn assists these vessel management companies or ship owners to digitalize their fleet and use maritime secret weapon, which is digitalization. So I would end on that note that it's imperative at this juncture that this adoption, this digital adoption, whether it be crew management, whether it be plan maintenance system, or various things should come under one unified interoperable platforms in order to create informative and valuable data, and it in turns will help these companies to boost revenue and make better informed decisions for their crew on board as well. For that matter, we have got the inspections suite, you know, which can conduct ISPS, MLC inspections and you know, ISPS inspections as well. So digitalization and unified approach to create this valuable data would help to make better and well-informed decisions. I would conclude on that note. Thank you, Captain Óli.
Thank you very much. You were on time, and And we have some questions now. Unfortunately, I could only hear the presentations from ShipSafe and from Eva. So, but I would like to hear from Eva if she has any comments on what harassment makes to seafarers. Thanks.
Hi. Yes, thanks. So I think your question is just what it does, or what do you want to? Can you be more specific as to what you think you want to?
Yeah. What does it do to crew members on a ship?
Yeah.
Harassment.
Well, I think yeah, I can of course only speak from my own perspective. I cannot talk for anybody else. So let's start with that. And I think that it's yeah. I've sailed on a few ships myself, and I was not harassed or assaulted in any way myself, so that's good. But I was bullied, so that was not good. So I can tell you what it did to me when that happened, and it's not. Bullying is not always like shouting or doing. It's also like making somebody else feel worthless sometimes, or not valued, or that you're doing something wrong, or that you're not being who you should be, not being your authentic self. That is how the psychologists mostly call it. And I think when you shine a light on that, it creates immediately an idea around how safe that person can perform their duties on board. Because if you cannot feel like you can be yourself, or if you cannot feel valued or seen as the person you are, or if you are bullied or put down, or negatively addressed to, then you also maybe don't feel confident to perform your duties, or you cannot talk to people, or you feel close, or you can even feel afraid. And that's just only for like minor bullying. If you're harassed or assaulted, that can be a whole different thing. Then you can feel really unsafe, and then you're like in a fight-flight mode. And in my case, I was a dual licensed officer, so I was on the bridge and in the engine room. And when you're on the bridge, you're like in charge of the whole vessel, navigating it, and people are sleeping below decks. So you have a very big responsibility. And if you don't feel safe in your own way, and if you don't feel safe to speak up about this, I think you can imagine what safety risks that is. And on the other side, it also shows how relatively easy it can be to solve this safety risk. Because if you then value the person and just say, hey, how are you feeling? And how important allyship is. Because I had many colleagues who helped me in some cases where people were a little bit mean to me, or said had some remarks about me being a woman on board of ships, for example. So they would say, like, I don't have to teach you anything because you're a woman. You would get pregnant and leave this whole profession. It doesn't make sense to tell you anything. And if my colleagues here were hearing that, then they would speak up for me. So they said, "No, you cannot say that. That's mean. Just if you want to say mean things, just go somewhere else where nobody can hear you," for example. And that helped me. And then I felt valued. So these things are relatively easy to do, but they're really effective, because then you can be confident. You can be confident in your job, and I think that's just what's the. So I hope that answers your question, Ollie.
Yeah, it does. It does, and I would like to have some comments from Len Quist about how we can mitigate bullying and harassment. If he has something to say about that.
So we practice and believe in an engaged mental wellness program. we always say that our doctors and nurses that work on board a number of types of vessels, including cruise ships and offshore fishing vessels, the medical professionals are usually the heart of the vessel, and sometimes when people are maybe not comfortable talking to vessel command, it's a place where they can go and just offload. And I think in the commercial shipping world, there's that opportunity to maybe engage with someone who understands their world in a ship to shore or shore to ship kind of conversation. And small issues need to be dealt with proactively. But then there's also changing the culture. I think we talk about this, fight to flight or flight to fight aspect, and decision making sits right where the emotional part of the brain is. And if that is not in balance, you're going to get a lot of risk increases because of people are not present. Their situational awareness is being distracted. So changing the culture, having outside resources, and early engagement so small things don't spiral out of control, I think is critical. And it's not just one size fits all. It's going to require multiple approaches, and capturing those in a systematic way to then see what works and what doesn't work. There are cultural differences, there are operational differences. Key is to get support of vessel command, and not just of the company, but getting support on board for a proactive mental wellness program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Len. We will, they're telling me that we need to wrap up now, and we got 10 minutes left of our meeting. So we'll go over to questions and answers, and the audience who's listening is invited to ask questions to the panel or to myself, please.
Okay,
Go ahead.
actually, it's Carlene, and yes, I do have a question for our panel. I have a question actually for Dr. Diskin as the medical professional on this panel, and thank you very much for joining us. You mentioned the telemed capabilities that are increasingly appearing on vessels and on shore. And can you speak to the effectiveness of telemed, especially in an industry where it is so much happening offshore, and how that impacts the ability to provide medical services to mariners? And I wonder if you could also speak to if you've encountered resistance to the adoption of telemed or the willingness to spend the money on it.
Yeah, I think that the answer to the first question is that telemedicine is very effective in a number of different areas. It's effective to deliver primary care to the crew who may have chronic problems with high blood pressure, diabetes. It can be part of maintaining their wellness so they don't need shoreside medical care. In some cases, the telemedicine can substitute in situations where the crew member would have been required to go shoreside for a consultation. And that can save the company, not only can it save them significant out-of-pocket dollars, but it's a return on investment, because when they get to port, they may not lose that crew member for a day. They may not need to engage port agents who, for the most simple projects, just stack on dollar after dollar, $200 to get a $3 prescription for somebody. So there's all sorts of advantages to having the medical care begin by telehealth on board the ship, to even if they do need to go shoreside, to make that more effective. Right location, right physician, right specialty, with the knowledge getting and arriving ahead of time. That's one of the things that's always very important to me is, we'll send a crew member with a cardiac problem to an orthopedic hospital. I'll see. So it's where is the best place? The port agents varying their degree of professionalism, and in many locations, they get paid for every referral to a hospital. So if we can engage through telehealth with that problem, we can then demand and suggest where in the world they go to through the network that we have. So it makes everything more effective. And early engagement. Don't call us for telehealth consultation as the ambulance is arriving to carry the patient off the ship, because it's very difficult for us to intervene at that point. Now, if we layer on that the ability to get simple information technologically to enable us to make better decisions on board the ship, that makes it even more useful. The problem that you have is basically return on investment. What are you going to put on a cargo ship with 10 crew versus a different type of ship with 200 crew? So that's where you have to sort of, my medical hat would be to have a little mini intensive care unit on every ship, right? That's not going to happen, right? So when you're balancing resources, return on investment with the ships, sometimes we get resistance, sometimes we are able to point things out with metrics as to maybe how many diversions they had that could have been avoided. When I was medical director for Royal Caribbean, one diversion could cost us $250,000, $300,000 easily. So if you can avoid a diversion for a ship, that can be extremely cost effective. And I think that's where the return on investment is short term and the return on investment is long term with telehealth. And now we have the capabilities.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I saw Len nodding there, so I think that is really a benefit that both companies can offer mariners for their welfare. I'm afraid, Captain Óli, it's time for us to wrap up because we have to finish this panel and then get back to the rest of the conference. But thank you to Captain Olsen as well as all the panelists, and thank you for the commitment you've made and the investment you've made in the health of the mariner and safety on the high seas. Thank you all.